What it is that we're doing will be like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it to the future.
Welcome to Reverend Dr. Heber Brown III.
Good evening. It is so good to be with you tonight. It is my first time in Utah, and it has been a memorable experience already just in the few hours that I've been here. I'm already making plans to come back because I will not be able to learn and soak in all that my spirit is saying is here to learn about. Some important matters out of the way, though, before I jump in. One, BYU won their basketball game today. Very important, very important. I was watching the highlights on ESPN before I walked in tonight. Really excited about that. And two, I want to invite you, in the spirit of what Jill just shared, I want to invite you to lean into this. Sure, I have a presentation. Yes, I have a talk. Yes. And I did not fly all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, here to BYU just to give a robotic presentation and then pack up and leave. I believe that you have something within you that can help to season and flavor and shape even this presentation and our conversation. So I want to invite you to lean into a co-creator's posture. I will share information, but do not be surprised if I throw a little bit of a pivot and curveball and ask you to talk to your neighbor and talk back at me. In fact, in my tradition, in the African American Christian church tradition, call and response is very important. That if the congregation is quiet, to me as a preacher, it means I'm not doing a good job. So don't be, look, somebody's been to church. Thank you. Yes. And so do not be afraid to talk back at me, all right? All right, so I'm here to talk about the Black Church Food Security Network. And I want to start also by sharing that this network was born out of a particular context in a particular place with a specific community at heart and in mind. And so out of the Black church community, springing from Baltimore City, an urban environment, and addressing the challenges of food insecurity and health challenges in the African American community. So it's a very particular place-based effort, and I believe that there are universal wisdoms that can be transferable to various communities and contexts. And so keep an eye out for some of those as well. Even if the context is a little bit different, keep an eye out for the transferable wisdom that can be applied to your context or those with whom you share life. So the story of the Black Church Food Security Network, it really centers, speaking of place, in this particular place. In the bottom right corner of this aerial view, that is the Pleasant Hope Baptist Church. I was blessed to serve there as the pastor for 14 years, nearly 15 years, and come from a long line of Hebers who also were and are clergy members. And growing up as a preacher's kid and a preacher's grandkid, most of the energy and work was not actually tied up into Sunday morning, but rather Monday through Saturday. And a lot of that Monday through Saturday work was focused on caring for those who were in the hospital or those who were homebound with various ailments. Well, in those times of meeting with them, I also was blessed to be privy to information about the more delicate, confidential parts of their lives. And in those conversations, I began to hear from the members of my church about some of the reasons why they were in the hospital in the first place. And one of those reasons that came up time and time again was related to food. And as I searched and thought about the something more, the initial thought that came to mind was to connect with the local grocery store right across the main intersection that I knew had the kinds of food that could help transform the diet and thereby the health of the people in my congregation. I walked into that market, and when I walked into the market, before I spoke to anybody, I just started walking through the aisles of that store, and I looked at the price tag of the produce. And when I looked at the price tag of the produce in the market that day, I had sticker shock. My jaw dropped. I knew I could not afford, there's an amen in the room, yes. In fact, our jaws are still dropping a little bit right now because of the price of the food that we need. I knew that I couldn't afford the produce, and I knew that those that I shared life with couldn't afford it either. And so that was the first kind of hesitation when I walked in. But then there was the environment of the market. And the environment made clear to me that it was not designed with me in mind. You see that street down the middle with the 45, that's called York Road? What I realized that day was there is a wall there that cannot be seen by the naked and natural eye. It's an invisible wall that historically is called a red line. It's a history that springs from the 1930s in this country, when the government commissioned the Homeowners Loan Corporation to go around the country establishing maps that would dictate where the most valuable properties and developments were. And those places on the map were literally green. They were green shaded areas. And then there were yellow shaded areas on these maps that some things were good, but there were some challenges, but they were yellow. And then there was red areas. And the red areas were the areas where those who were doing the evaluations said that this is not a place of value, this is not a place where investment should flow, and this is a place where the quality of life will be very different, and not in a good way. Well, in Baltimore, York Road was a redlining road. So the more I learned about that, the more furious I became. So when God tapped me on the shoulder that day and said, "Why you're mad?" all that stuff came out. And I get near the front door of the church as I'm walking back to Pleasant Hope, and I get near the front of that door, and as I'm sharing all this and telling God all the things that are wrong and problematic about all of this, God says, "Look to your right, Heber." I was right near the front door of the church, and I looked to my right, and when I did, this is what I saw. Now, this is a scene that I had seen many, many, many times before. It's right near the front door of the church. I parked my truck there. I have meetings there. I'd seen this scene all the time, but it was something about that day, in that moment, with divine discontent bubbling up inside of me that said, wait a minute. This was right under my nose the whole time, but now I can see something. God gave me a vision, and the something that I saw had a caption underneath, and the caption said, "If you cannot afford what they have across the street, roll up your sleeves and grow it yourself." Yeah. I went inside the congregation, and I still remember the Sunday morning I got up after this experience, and I told the church, I said, "Church, I've received a vision from God." And they rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, Lord, here he goes again." Everybody didn't come along, but a remnant did. A small group of people said, "Yes, we'll get behind you." And sometimes all you need is a small group of people who says, "I'll go with you." They came with me, and we started working to transform this space. And in short order, because of the focused dedication of a small group of people, we were able to transform this into that. Yeah. And I got to tell you, one of the biggest reasons as to why this was successful was because of this woman right here. Maxine Nicholas. When this vision for a garden came forward, she said, Pastor Brown, I'll help you. She knew how to grow food. Sister Maxine, she had more, let's call it juice in the congregation than I did. In other words, when I said, come on, y'all, let's go work on the garden, again, the rolling of the eyes happened. Y'all should have been there. When Sister Maxine stood up and said, y'all, come on, let's help our pastor. Y'all know that he don't know nothing about growing no food. God just gave him a vision, but not the know-how. When she stood up and said that, the whole AARP club got up with her and followed her out to the garden. The story doesn't happen without her. She brought the know-how, she had the credibility, and she had the wherewithal to lead our church into maximizing what we already had in our hands. What if you could take what's already owned in black churches and steward it and cultivate it in such a way that you could create a network of churches that bring their little bit to the table and work together to provide what is needed for the whole? That was the idea. I got so excited that I started studying because I did not believe that I was the first person to ever think like this. If you do it right, it's like a crystal ball. Because if you can study the history, it actually can give you some clues as to where things can go next. And so the history of African American religious leaders who have done this kind of thing before, their stories arrested me, helped to inform how I could lean into this. But one of my favorites is Mrs. Fanny Lou Hamer. This woman was a dynamo, not just when it comes to voting rights and advocacy in the civil rights movement, but she was a farmer who connected her farming and her love for democracy and her activism all together. Check out what she says about farming and food. She said, food is used as a political weapon. But if you have a pig in your backyard and some vegetables in your garden, you can feed yourself and your family and nobody can push you around. It sounds like she was trying to figure out a way to bring together an analysis of food environments to empower her community. This is our church garden program. We go to black churches and say, listen, y'all got land just sitting there. And yes, the grass is pretty, but wouldn't it be something if that grass and that land could be utilized to help meet human need in a way that is dignifying for your members and your neighbors? I go to congregations and I look for where their Sister Maxine is. And I have learned that every congregation has at least one Sister Maxine. The Sister Maxine at this particular church is there in that blue shirt with that beautiful hat on and that big smile. That's Sister Newville. She's from Jamaica, and standing around her are all of her homies and the pastor. She's the one who stood up and said, let's get going, and they started a garden right at their church with our support. And we figured out if you can bring farmers and food businesses to the church and talk about them in the weeks leading up to their coming, get the people excited about supporting local growers and local businesses, that they would not just be excited about getting the food, but they'd also be excited about supporting their neighbors and supporting the farmers in their community as well. And so we bring the farmers right to church ground, right there. Before people can even get to their car, they have to walk through. And listen, it's not just a farmer's market. We got cooking classes, the nutrition classes, there's a DJ, we are line dancing, we having a good time and an experience, because food is not just something to give nutrients to our physical body. For many of us, there's a whole lot of experiences wrapped up in your favorite foods. We wanted to help to create an experience that people would have good memories by and continue to support as well. We were able to think about scale and volume. Church gardens are great, but they don't feed entire communities. They are demonstration sites, inspiration sites, but not necessarily scale. That's where we partnered with black farmers and truck drivers to go down south, load up the 18-wheeler, and bring back food to the cities that needed that food. We ended up launching a CSA program. Anybody familiar with the CSA program, Community Supported Agriculture? It's like when you pay a farmer up front to get like 10 weeks of produce delivered, or you go pick it up. That's what we did for Ebenezer Baptist Church, and this was our first meeting of bringing the farmers and the church together to work out the details of that partnership. Here's the first day of delivery. In addition to a whole lot of vegetables, they also threw in 100 watermelons. And I asked them to pile those watermelons up in front of the church sign because I wanted to make a point, just like Vernon Johns, a point about the watermelons being in front of this historic civil rights congregation and making a connection between food security and food sovereignty and civil rights as well. Our churches are now all over the country. What started out as one church in Baltimore City is now nearly 250 congregations across the United States. And I go around. One of the things that I was blessed to experience as another epiphany on the eve of my 30th birthday was it felt like another divine message from God. I had spent my 20s pointing at everything problematic in the world, everything I was upset about, everything that wasn't right, everything that wasn't fair. Most of my 20s, I spent pointing at that kind of stuff. And yes, protesting, rally, in the streets, it's wrong. But on the eve of my 30th birthday, in another conversation with God, God said to me, Heber, it's wonderful to point out what is wrong, as long as you save some energy for the things that you can build to make it right. And the quote that came with that in a simple phrase was, critique what is, create what should be. Your most impactful and profound critique could be not in what you say, but in what you build. The Black Church Food Security Network, now with 250 churches, a blueberry farm in Virginia, a citrus fruit farm in Florida, talks of an apple orchard in Buffalo, our very first refrigerated van to do small hauls in the Mid-Atlantic, and so many other partnerships that are emerging in this ecosystem give me full confidence that what it is that we're doing will be like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it to the future. Sometimes the solutions will not come from outside of you. Sometimes the solutions will come from within. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to share.